I want to give you a mental model to work with Code Interpreter. Now, I want you to think about Code Interpreter like this really fantastic intern that's come to work for you. They're going to be your personal assistant, and whatever you need help with, they're going to try to do for you. Now, this intern is really smart and knows a lot of things. They can actually program for you. They can interpret documents. They can do data visualizations. They can do all kinds of interesting things. They can work with the computer really, really well. And that's the key, is they know how to program and run different tools on the computer. Now, unfortunately, your IT department really does not trust this intern. So they've only given them access to a computer that has a limited set of tools and no internet access. So anything you ask them to do, it has to be something that you hand off to them on their computer, and they have to be able to do it with their limited computer that they've got. Now, the other really important thing to note about your intern is your intern makes mistakes. So you absolutely need to pay attention to the output they provide and double check it, make sure it's right. And another third thing that you really want to know about your intern is they don't have a very long memory. You can talk to them, and they will remember things through your conversation up to a point. And if you start a new conversation, they're going to forget everything that you said before, and they're only going to know about what's going on in the new conversation. So if you're in the middle of the hallway and you give them a task to do and you start describing it and you walk off before they've completed the task, they may not remember what's going on when you see them next time and you ask them to start a new task. They won't remember any of the things that they did before. They'll only remember what you're telling them right now. So those are some important things to note. They've got limited computer access. Your intern is going to make mistakes, and there's a limited memory. So when you're having a conversation with them, you really want to get everything done during that conversation, because if you walk off, the intern may lose all the files that you gave them. They may forget important information. They may not be able to get started again and pick up where the task left off. So when you're working with a code interpreter, you want to have one conversation and you want to get everything done with it, and don't expect to come back easily. Now, let's take a look at a conversation with Code Interpreter and how we're going to use Code Interpreter. And I want to give you a sense of how to talk to Code Interpreter, how to give it statements. It's just language. It's your intern. So what you say is you go and you break statements down and you give it things in individual chunks. Now, I've given it a zip file. I've given Code Interpreter a zip file that has several files from my computer. And these, you can imagine this task where you download all these files, or you're building and working with all these different documents, and over time, you don't take the time to organize them properly. So I'd like to give my intern the task of reading through all these documents, figuring out what they are, coming up with a better organizational structure or folder structure on my computer for them. Now, the intern doesn't have access to my computer, so I'm going to have to give them to the intern. The intern will go and work with them on its computer and then give them back to me. Now, another thing is I have to break the task down step by step for the intern. And so here's what I'm going to do. I've given the intern the document. I've given Code Interpreter the document, and I'm going to say, I need your help organizing the files in the uploaded zip. 1, I want you to help figure out what is in them by opening and reading each one to create a summary. 2, I want you to propose a folder structure that would better organize the files. 3, I want you to propose better names for each file just using the letters A through Z and 0 through 9, and keep the existing file extensions. And 4, when you've done all this, show me your proposed folder names and structure. So I'm going to check over the intern. I'm going to check over Code Interpreter before it does anything with this. Now you notice I'm breaking this down step by step. I'm trying to give them a process. You can imagine this if I went to this intern and I just said, hey, organize my files, it's going to be overwhelming to them. They're not going to understand what to do necessarily, or they may go off in the wrong path. So I really want to break this down step by step. They also don't know anything about me. They don't know anything about my files. So the first step has got to be go and look at this and figure out what's in it. And when you're working with Code Interpreter, typically one of the very first things you're going to do is you're going to tell it to look at the file, read it, summarize it, outline it, figure out what columns are in the data. Whatever it is, you're going to have it go and try to understand the file first. So Code Interpreter goes off and it says, all right, let's begin by extracting the contents of the zip file to see what we have. We'll then analyze the content of each file to generate a summary. Afterwards, I'll propose a folder structure and file names based on the content. Now notice how it's mirroring what I asked it to do. That's really important. I broke the task down in sort of simple steps like you would give to an intern, and now it's sort of repeating back. It's Code Interpreter is acting like my intern, basically verifying here's what I'm going to do, and then it goes through and it lists here's what was in the zip file. Now one of the things about Code Interpreter is this intern is always looking for feedback. The intern knows that it makes mistakes. Code Interpreter knows it makes mistakes. It wants to show you its work. It wants to show you what it's thinking to help make sure it's getting the right thing. So it's saying, hey, here's what was in the zip file. It also noticed something, and it's being a smart intern. It's saying, hey, there's some hidden files, but those probably don't matter, so I'm going to ignore them. Now, if I cared about it, I would know about it, and I could go follow up on it. And then the intern says, next, I'll read the content of each file and generate a summary. Please note we can only extract text from PDFs if they contain selectable text. If the text is part of an image, we may not be able to generate a summary. So the intern's trying to tell us its limitations, and it's always really important to pay attention to these limitations, what it can and can't do. And now I want you to notice the next thing. Now this is one of the really, really important things of Code Interpreter, is some of the tasks that you give Code Interpreter, that intern is going to go and write some software. They're going to go program a little bit of software that will help them accomplish the task. And the intern's going to try to decide what are the right things to build a program for it, or program in order to solve, versus the things that the intern can just do in its head. Now in this case, it's written all this software right here, and basically what this software is doing is it's going through and it's going to try to read all the files and extract text from them. Now, you can work with Code Interpreter without ever having to understand what is inside the code. And that's one of the pieces of Code Interpreter that's really impressive, is that it can go and program on your behalf to try to accomplish a task, and you don't have to be able to read the code that it's producing. Now, just like your intern, let's assume your intern said, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go write this program to try to read these PDF files. The intern may not succeed, and the intern may tell you, hey, I wasn't able to do this, or certain files I couldn't make it work, I couldn't program. And sometimes that's going to be the outcome. But in this case, the intern says, okay, it's gone, the intern used its program to go and extract things. Code Interpreter is telling us, hey, here's what's in all of these different files. In some of the files, it tells us, hey, the text extraction from this file didn't generate any output. It's telling us that there's nothing there. The intern then says it's going to propose a file structure, and again, notice what it does. It goes and writes code again. Your intern is programming and writing some tools to help solve the problem or the task that you've given the intern. And so in this case, it's written all of the software, and then it's proposing a set of basically folders that all of these files could go into and how they would be organized. And in this case, it ends up with this big bucket of other stuff, right? Some of the files, it says, look, please note that some files are categorized under others because the summaries did not provide clear categorization keywords. And so my intern did its best, but at the end of the day, it couldn't completely accomplish my task in a way that I'm happy with. Now, we could get upset with our intern, but I'm going to instead say, hey, let's give our intern feedback. Whenever Code Interpreter isn't giving you quite what you want, try to give it feedback. Try to help it along with the task, just like you would an intern. Go and give it some more information. So I just tell it, hey, don't give up. Can you try alternate methods to figure out what is in the other category? Try other ways of getting text from the PDFs. Look at the file names. Keep trying and do your best. So I'm telling Code Interpreter, don't just give up and lump all this stuff under others. Go back. And so this is one of the things you'll want to be doing with your intern is sometimes the intern's going to fail. They're going to try to write a program to do something, and they're eager to write programs and to write software basically that's going to help it. But it's not always going to work, and sometimes you just kind of have to tell Code Interpreter, go back and try again, try some alternate methods, try again. And so Code Interpreter goes off, Again, it looks at the file names in particular this time, and then updates the categorization. And this time, the other category isn't there, so it does a better job, and based on that, I'm happy with the organization. So the intern followed my step-by-step process, and this is going to be really, really key when you're working with a code interpreter. Look at how I broke the task down into individual steps. I didn't say just go and organize that. Sometimes that'll work, but most of the time you're going to get a better outcome if you tell it step by step individual sub-goals or sub-tasks to complete in order to achieve the overall desired effect that you're looking for. So in this case, I've broken things down step by step. Always break it down step by step for your intern or your code interpreter, and don't assume that the intern knows things they don't. The intern always needs to be given context, always needs to be given sufficient information to accomplish the task. Now at the very end, I now need a way to tell the intern to give me the file back and to give me the organization. And so what I say is, this looks good, create a zip with the files in the structure so that I can download it. And this is one of the other important pieces that you always want to remember with Code Interpreter. We're going to go and put things into Code Interpreter. They're going to, you can think of it as your intern working with your data and your files on their computer. And then at some point, most of the time, you're going to want to get that stuff out. So it could be that you're doing some analysis just for your own edification and learning, and so you're going to do the analysis with your intern, and they're going to tell you about what's in the documents and summarize it for you. And that's the outcome. But a lot of times what we're going to want is some document, some file, some presentation to be created by the intern and given back to us. And so at the end, what we can always do is we can just tell it to create the file so we can download it. So in this case, I'm going to say create a zip file with the files in this structure so that I can download it. So I'm telling the intern, you did a good job, you've gotten the folder structure that I want, you've gotten the files organized and renamed in a way that I'm okay with, and I want to download it as is, and now I've got the zip file that I can go and download. Now if I was unhappy, I could really nitpick and say, I don't think the file renaming was that great, and I could go and try to have the intern push again and really try to understand some of these documents that the intern didn't do that great of a job with. But in this case, I'm happy with it, and I've gotten far enough. I'm much better off than where I started with. I now have some organization to my files, and I can just download this zip file and get myself the folder structure that's been proposed, the files organized into it, and I don't have to go and do it manually, which is pretty amazing. So we can think of all kinds of tasks where if we just had that intern, that personal assistant, that not only were they pretty smart, but they could also go and write software for us on demand. They could be like our own personal software engineer, but we don't have to know which tasks are the right ones for software all the time. Sometimes we do, but not all the time. And they can go and help us and accomplish these different tasks for us.